guys. I just finished a 12-hour shift in the ICU and I am mind blown right now. We just had a code blue at the end of our shift, so at 7 o'clock, and honestly, there could not be a worse time for someone to code, but that's not, it's kind of funny because there's no sense in like saying that at all, because when death tries to come, it doesn't discriminate against whatever time it is. It's kind of like strange to think about, but I heard one of the nurses say it's so weird because it always seems to happen right at shift change. But I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me if anybody else is in healthcare and works with patients. Is that something that you know or have found to be true as well? Because it always seems like the codes happen or the rapid responses happen right at the end of the shift. So I don't know, it's just kind of strange how it all works, but yeah, it was kind of unfortunate. It was an ER admit that we had at about 6 o'clock, and so she had a slow heart rate, and she was on these drips to keep her heart rate from going too low, and this was the second medication that they had tried for her, and it was working, but we kept having to increase her medication to keep her alive and just keep her heart rate operating in a way that was allowing blood to go around the body and oxygenate the tissues. So unfortunately, we lost a pulse at about 7 o'clock, and we go in there, we're on the chest, and everyone seems to be nearby because we're, it's in the ICU setting. There's usually a respiratory therapist there. The patient was already intubated, and that's an advantage, by the way, if you're not familiar with the medical field and how when somebody has a code, that means that we either lose a pulse or they stop breathing or something like that. And this patient already had a breathing tube in, so that made it a lot easier because she was already being ventilated and oxygenated in the way that we had already set up. So now we only had to focus on her circulation and her pulse and how her heart was operating, and so that was the big deal. We got there's this really cool thing that I haven't had the opportunity to use in a code yet called the Lucas device. And the Lucas device is it's a chest compression device that you put underneath the patient and on top of the patient, and it helps compress the heart. And it takes the place of people doing chest compressions with their upper body, hands and arms. If you've ever done chest compressions, it's really tiring, and so whoever invented that device, probably somebody with the name Lucas, is my guess. That is a really amazing resource, and that was brought over to us, and we put that on her. And I learned something from the intensivist today, and I thought that it was really, this has not been stressed to me before, so I thought this was really cool. I was helping make sure that the patient still had a pulse, and when I was checking, I couldn't palpate it. I couldn't feel a pulse, and I turned and I told the physician I can't feel a pulse, and because we were monitoring that, and he was he had a technique where he was using both hands in almost like the groin area to detect the pulse, and he was kind of showing me how to do that, and it was really valuable. And we were just trying to find the best location to find the pulse. We ended up finding a strong pulse in her carotid, and he he also was teaching me that it's really important to find the pulse when the compressions are going, because when you can tell when the pulse is there, when the compressions are going, that means the blood is being pumped around, you've got circulation, you've got good cardiac output, your heart rate is putting out the oxygen and the nutrients that are being carried by the blood, and that's what keeps the person alive. That's why you do the chest compressions, because oxygen is everything. You want to have the oxygen in the blood, you can't just have it sitting there. That's why you have to do compressions when somebody has no pulse. Otherwise, you'll pass away, your organs will fail, and you'll die. So he was telling me, you have to put your whole hand and feel this pulse. Detect it when they're doing chest compressions. And when we're pausing chest compressions for reassessment, if we achieve that pulse, that natural intrinsic pulse, the one where the heart starts to pick up its rhythm again because of the medications that we're giving through the IV, then you have more information, right, about how the body's being perfused and how the heart is doing its job. Are you able to detect that pulse still? How strong is it after the chest compressions are paused, for example? So I thought that was really valuable. That was a good takeaway. But yeah, the patient survived, and she wanted everything done. That was her wishes, and I'm really grateful whenever we know that as healthcare professionals. When somebody comes in and we understand clearly what the patient wanted before an emergency happened, that's always really helpful in the terms of making good decisions ethically. It's been interesting, because I think that when you're on the healthcare side of it, when you are the person that is administering the chest compressions and the medications, and you know, like, there's a chance that this person will never be the same. It's wild. But then when you're the family member and you have a glimmer of hope, a lot of times people want everything done to save their family member, even if it means, we try it and it doesn't work. And I think that's a huge ethical conflict that we have as healthcare professionals, because you want the person to have a good life, you want the person to have happiness, you want the person to have good quality of life. Like, we don't want to just be alive but unhappy and not able to move and just be kind of like laying there. Like, that's not good quality of life. And at least for me, I'll speak for myself, that I don't want that. And it's a popular saying among nurses to not want to be placed in a nursing home, because we see the stress that is placed on the healthcare staff in the nursing home. They're given unrealistic amounts of patient assignment. I don't think that it's possible to work in a nursing home or a place like that and truly, truly do the best that you can for a patient, just because of all of the needs that a person has. And there's too many patients to one staff member. I think that's a tough one, but I wouldn't want to put my family in a nursing home. I wouldn't want anybody that I cared about to be in a nursing home. And that's not because the staff aren't good people. I just think that the constraints, it's like understaffing at any place, right? If you go to a restaurant and they're understaffed, things are going to take longer. Things are going to maybe get missed because there's more customers to one server, for example. There's more dishes to one line chef. There's a higher chance that things get missed because the stress is placed on the workers and there's more demands. There's people. One thing that I do not like about nursing and patient safety is the interruptions. Sometimes you're doing something important and then somebody comes up behind you to tell you something, and maybe that's a really important thing that they're telling you as well, but it's so easy to get distracted. You have to be so on top of it to make sure that you are not getting distracted. It's funny, we have these like notes that we take as nurses. We have sticky notes, and it's funny because sometimes there's so many sticky notes, you sit down and you look at every note that you took and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a mess. And it's just because you know that it's people's lives that you're holding in your hands, and you can't miss anything. And so it's just very interesting to think about that. Yeah. Another thing I've noticed about working in the ICU is it's really given me perspective. Sometimes it's really easy to kind of like be ungrateful or take certain people for granted in your life or whatever, what have you. And when you are watching people at their worst moments on their deathbeds, and you can see the family members coming to the patient's side, it's really moving, and you start to think like, I'm so grateful that my family is healthy, and because not everybody has healthy families. Some people have a family member in the ICU past like on their deathbed right now. So it's just one of those waking up moments where it just kind of shakes you, and to me it's good. It shakes me in the right way, because that's a good thing for me. That's a good thing for me. I need to be reminded of all the blessings that I have. I need to be reminded that God has been so good to me, and I need to be like just, I think, reminded more often, because of the fact that sometimes it's really easy to focus on what's not going right. But when you think about like something so life-changing, like somebody fighting for their life and they can't stay alive without medical intervention, it like totally changes your perspective on what matters. And you can turn to your family member, you can turn to, you know, I can turn to my husband, and I can appreciate everything, even if I'm not particularly happy with, you know, how something has been going in terms of, you know, our relationship or something like that. We have so much to remember and be grateful for. I do. I'll speak for myself. I like to say that. But yeah. Today was good. Not for the patient. I'm glad that she's alive. I'm glad that she's alive, but recently in our ICU, we've been seeing a lot of really tough cases. There's somebody in our ICU right now who's in their 30s, and we're not sure if it's, I think that they're gonna, you know, he's got a breathing tube in. We're keeping that person alive, and that person has kids that are, I don't know, that person, it's like that person could be me. That person could be somebody that I'm close to, right? Similar age. I'm in my 30s. But I think people, you know, this was one of those things where people make certain choices with their health and their life, and things can grab a hold of you, and if you don't get ahead of it, sometimes your life can be in danger. And I feel bad for this individual, and I feel bad for their family, but I also feel, I think when I think about eternity, I think about God, I think about Jesus saves in our life, you know, when we take our last breath here on earth, if we've received salvation, we have eternal life in Christ. So when I see somebody passing away, I know they've been saved. I feel thankful that suffering is over in their physical body. Some some people want to just be with the Lord too. Yeah, it's a good perspective shift, but to see a lot of people in these like worst moments of their lives, the family members, the patients themselves, I'm grateful that it's giving me the perspective that I feel like I need at this time in my life. Like, instead of just saying I'm grateful, I actually feel it, right? There's a difference. Yeah. I was given a report to somebody that I started working with. I started around the same time as her at this facility. I felt bad because we had just received the patient from the ER and I didn't have all the details or all the admission documentation done. Sometimes that happens. You just have to hand off. I'll never forget one nurse that I met one time. She was she made me so happy when she said this, and I totally agree. She goes, "This is 24-hour care." So if you feel like sad or, disappointed that you didn't accomplish everything that needed to be done that day, I mean, given that you did your best and you weren't just sitting down, then passing it off, I wish that we didn't have to feel, I feel guilty sometimes, even though sometimes I've literally done the best that I can. And there's still so much to do. I guess it just depends on the person receiving the patient, right? Their attitude towards you and their grace and their ability to say and accept, like, yeah, we do 24-hour care here. Anyway, that's something I like to remember and tell other nurses if they ever act like they're feeling bad that they didn't accomplish everything that's on the to-do list for the patient that day. Anyway, I'm about to go eat something and rest and do it all again tomorrow. All right, talk to you guys later.